What's going on, everyone? How are you? We're doing kind of like a swap cast today. Chucko, Cheli, and myself. We're going to do a swap cast. This is going to be uploaded to both our platforms. I'm just giving a quick intro, but Chuck's going to drive. So, we're going to be talking about what is God. Now, I've done this presentation on my channel maybe a year and a half ago, but there's way more people on this channel right now who haven't seen it, who haven't understood it. And I hope it makes some sense to you guys. So let me bring Chuck on real quick. Hey there.
Hey, how you doing? Look, I got a little guest with me, and I didn't tell you about this beforehand. But in case you hear little squeaks, I got these little pups here with me in the office,
Dude.
and barely got their eyes open. Okay,
How old are they? What are they? 4 weeks?
2 weeks.
Oh my god.
Look at that. Okay, so in case you hear a little squeaking during the show, that's
No,
why.
that's fine. But he can't be on camera because I won't be able to focus.
Yeah, he is. He's pretty cool, isn't he? He's definitely distracting.
How many of them do you have?
There's 5 of them right now.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I actually learned something about dogs. Do you know like they shoot out like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 puppies at once, but do you know they only gestate for like 2-3 months?
Yeah. Yeah, well, we just had these here. This is the second litter from the same weenie dog mix that we got there. She's I call her weenie dog because she's part dachshund and
This is the
part
second
Chihuahua.
litter this year. What is she, a sex worker?
Yeah, it is the second. The other ones are barely a year old. Yeah, and now we got this other litter.
Good lord.
What are you gonna do? Some people are motivated. Some dogs are motivated.
Yeah, for real. Jeez.
Anyway,
So I'm gonna let you take over, and let's get into it. So
yeah, absolutely. Look, I've started to stream live on the Cheli platform, just the audio right now, but we are recording this on video, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to get this out to a lot of different people because this is an unusual subject. How many people actually tackle this? Well, a lot of people try to, right? They give their opinions, they discuss stuff, they talk about their point of view, and they talk about their religion, their beliefs, so on and so forth. But it's kind of it's a hell of a heavy lift here. The nature of God. Some people would say that, look, I have a personal relationship and that's all there is. And I get it. I respect you. That's fine. But is there a general way we can look at this? Is there a open source concept that we can get to that would allow us to access this, that would allow us to share this experience? I got a lot of questions, even though I probably studied this longer in my life than anything else. The nature of God. What is my relationship? The bigger questions. Why does this or that happen? Uh, from the time I was a child, I've had these questions, right? And so have you the listener, you the viewer, if you've been awake, aware, and participating in the world around you. So, what about the nature of God, Micah? What do you have to say about this?
so I actually have a presentation that I'm gonna show because everybody knows I love my PowerPoints. And also because some people are visual learners, which is why everything I do is on PowerPoint. Is because there are a lot of audio learners out there, that's fine. But there's visual learners out there too. And I think that makes up a bulk of the people. They have to see it and hear it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share this presentation. It's going to be about 20 minutes long. I'm going to read it. First, let me pull it up. And then we'll have a conversation about it, and you tell me where it hits. So first and foremost, can you see this?
Yeah. Okay. So right now I see on my screen, what is God? Question mark.
Right. Mm-hmm. So that's what I started. So what I'm going to do is I have a book series. It's called Into the Rabbit Hole. And what I do with astrotheology, the way I break it down and just explain all these like mind-blowing, complicated topics, I do the same in society for where we're failing in a book series called Into the Rabbit Hole. And it's a series of 8 books right now, soon to be 9. What I'm going to read to you is a snippet of my first book, Into the Rabbit Hole, Beneath the Veil. And I wrote this when I was 28. Now, it wasn't quite there yet, but I'm going to show you the evolution of thought. So, scientists have determined through the completion of the Genome Project that humans are roughly 99.7% identical-wise. 2 penguins are more genetically different than you and I are. Whomever finds this, I want you to try this experiment. Write your name down. Write your two parents' names down above yours. Now you have 4 grandparents, 8 great grandparents, and you go on. Let's go back 35 generations. It roughly takes you back to the year 840 AD. You will have 137 billion people. Now, the number of ancestors list reminds me of the story of the servant summoned by the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh was pleased with how the servant was doing and wanted to reward him. Serving you is all I desire, sir, the servant said. No, I insist that you ask for something, anything you desire, the Pharaoh said back, and this went back and forth until the Pharaoh got mad and threatened punishment. After thinking long and hard, the servant, seeing a chessboard in front of him, said, on day 1, I want 1 piece of rice. On the second day, I want 2. Each day you will double the previous days until this chessboard is complete. I will place a grain on each square representing each day completed. The first day, the Pharaoh sent his finest servant and a parade with a golden pouch to deliver the grain. The amount grew exponentially, and halfway through the board, there was no more grain in the land. The Pharaoh summoned the servant back in. Your Highness, all I ever wanted to do was serve you, replied the servant. The servant, although now the wealthiest man in all the land, had retained his hubris. It was there that the Pharaoh learned not to question humility or assume that giving material gifts as tokens of appreciation were all that mattered. As for the servant, he continued to work for the Pharaoh. However, he had taken all the rice and continued to feed all the poor and homeless until the day of his death. Now, the point of both of these stories is that it's simple math. In fact, it's how cells divide in your body and mass produce. The reason I stopped at this particular time frame is because roughly how many people, it's been calculated, have ever lived on planet Earth. 140 billion people, that is. Remember, I only went to 840 AD, and that was 137 billion people. Even if we take the Bible literally, we still have to get to October 23rd, 4004 BCE. We're in a bit of a pickle here. There needs to be a way to bridge the gap, and this is where the pedigree collapse theory comes in. The concept states that there is no other explanation other than a whole lot of incest. Sometimes, like in the case of the Kentucky Blue people, there are no branches on the family tree. Sometimes, like in the banking or royal families, it's to preserve money or special genetics. That's a whole other topic where you could talk about the special bloodlines, the ones from outer space and things of that nature. But basically, based on our DNA, geneticists say that the furthest point one person can be on this planet from another is 50th cousins. Also, if your mom was from country X and your dad was from country X as well, there's a 20% chance they share a common ancestor within 10 generations back. So what does it all mean? Well, in a nutshell, it means that far back enough, we are all related and we are all one, and we shouldn't start to act like it. Let's explore different cognitive viewpoints. How about from a creationist then? Well, we all came from Adam and Eve, technically Eve from Adam's rib. Even more technically, Adam was made from the mud and the dirt from the world created. How about from an evolutionist then? Okay, let's start with the Big Bang. Let along with the fact that all the material we are came from an infinitesimally dense singularity, and nobody seems to want to explain where that singularity came from, but we'll let that slide. We were all one at one point. How about the idea of source energy then? If our souls are like crumbs off a cookie, the cookie being source, God, whatever you want to call it, then we are all connected multidimensionally, and upon death, it will be a vibrational change of frequency back to it. Let's try one last one. Aliens placing us here. You would still have to account for the first humans and how we all came about. You don't just magically have a species, poof, we're here, or do you? If so, who created the first test group of people? Secondly, what about the first spirit consciousness of DNA that evolved this higher level of thinking? There's a big difference between what I am writing and a monkey who's fed up with people taking pictures of him and throwing his shit at them. Still, though, the point is that at some point, things had to come back to a singularity in the sense of one source of point. Humans are so quick to think of the end of the world, things ending, but what they can't do is think about the beginning or if there was something before a beginning. Now, I just want to remind you that I wrote this when I was 28. Okay, so everything basically being one, but let's see if we could do it a little different. This is my first book 10 years ago. It was actually 11 years ago. It was so close to the ultimate truth. So let's define God.
Well, hold on. Before you go there, I think that this is a wonderful concept because It's the truth of things. Look, you don't have to you don't have to take mushrooms to get there, but it will get you there if you do.
Right.
Uh, you realize that all things are part of one another. It's one of those things that comes to you in that way, but just mathematically, scientifically, no matter which direction you want to go, like you said, okay, let's go with the creationist idea. Fine. Either way, you're stuck with this problem of we all come from the same place,
Right.
one way or another. If you go with the evolutionary Big Bang kind of deal, yes, I love how the singularity. Nobody ever explains that. Well, it's nonlinear time, right? It always was there, so therefore it always is there.
Mhm.
Okay, fine. Whatever you do with the Big Bang or in the singularity, you still have the singularity. Um, it's all from one place. Now,
Right.
what's fascinating is I've often asked this question. It was one of my childish questions, actually. I always got to think back to childhood. Look, if Adam and Eve, I asked this question, being instructed by Catholics at one point. Um, Adam and Eve, okay, fine. They have children, then they have children. Who did they have children with?
Right.
Because if they did, then that means everybody's related, right?
Hmm.
Not a good concept, not the thing that
No,
they.
but then what they're okay. I'm familiar with all the counter arguments from the religious, the apologetics, and all that. What they'll tell you is that Cain went and knew his wife from another land. Well, where did this other land come from?
Right. That's the thing. Cain goes out, and it says right there, right now he goes, he has to till the land. He's got to work with the sweat and all that. Yes, you can read those passages, and I have several times. Yeah, so he goes out and he knows his wife from somewhere else. Well, where did those people come from?
Right.
Uh, there it is, right? So either there was this group of people that was already there and not being talked about in the story to begin with, or right, they're all from the same source. Once again, if you start with one man, one woman, you can only go so far before you have to interbreed.
Right.
Anyway, regardless of all that, it still goes back to this concept that no matter what direction you come at it from, we're all from the same source. And you can go with the spiritual idea, like you said, the cookie crumb thing. I love this because it unifies all of it and says, look, here's the commonality. We're all from the same source. So please continue. But I just wanted to stop and remark that I love that. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I mean, the iron in our blood, right, could have only been there forged through a dying star. There's a reason that the Bible is an encoded astrology book, why astrology is so important, why astronomy is so important, the stars. When somebody becomes big in music or entertainment, they're a star. When we have children, they're called youngsters or young stars. It's just a play on words. Everybody knows this deep down all the way in the back, but we have to define God now. So the sun tells the hour of the day, the moon tells the day of the month, and the zodiac tells the month of the year. Now, you've seen our location in the Milky Way galaxy, so to speak, right? It's not in a remarkable place. It's certainly not the center of anything, But where we are located, there is a perfect calendar that we have discovered. It's a fingerprint of God, to me. So this is just to show that God exists. Now, aside from I just wrote it here too. So now that we've defined God as existing, but where is God? Well, it must be beyond space and time, beyond the 11 dimensions of string theory. Ask any religious person to define God, and they'll tell you he's omnipotent, he's omniscient, he's infinite, they'll tell you all these things. The second they say he's infinite, you've got them. God is infinite. How can something exist outside of infinity? It can't. The biggest lie we've been taught is that we are separate from God, that we should fear it, that we are separate from it. This is the big problem with religion. We are a part of it. Many of you have children. They are literally half of your DNA, so they are a part of you. But you experience them subjectively outside your body. So is with God, with us. A piece of God comes down in what we call consciousness into a body, and we feel separate from it. We are all God experiencing itself subjectively. If you are infinite and everything, nothing can exist outside of you. Not space, not time. So what do you do if you're everything? The only explanation for creation in our dimension, because remember, God is everything. Now, if you're everything, how are you going to experience something new? What are you going to read a book? What are you going to have a conversation with someone? No, everything is a part of you. The only explanation is that a little piece of God comes down and you trick yourself into thinking you're not God and experience creation subjectively. So basically, we are a species with amnesia living in a simulation. Einstein said about God that he believes in the God of Spinoza. Baruch Spinoza was a thinker who said that God doesn't want you huddled in churches and temples in the cold, praying as loud as you can with others, praying the loudest. In fact, Jesus says that those that give for publicity or praise the loudest, they have their reward. And when they say they have their reward, what that's trying to tell you or teach you is that people who donate and people who help people out for recognition, whether it's their cell phone or whatever they're doing, if they're doing it for recognition, that's their reward. The reward is not the act itself. So they say if you pray, pray by yourself. Spinoza's God wants you to go to the mountains and the lake and enjoy what I am created for you and worship that way. The biggest lie we have ever been collectively taught is that we need to fear and worship and that we are not a part of it. Now, even further than that, when we are a baby in our mother's womb, the mother, being the supreme being, is aware of the baby. However, the baby is not aware of the mother from its vantage point, as is with us with God. We are each a piece of God, unaware of the whole because we're in the middle of it. Now, Alan Watts understood this concept. Jesus Christ knew he was God. So wake up and find out eventually who you really are. In our culture, of course, they'll say you're crazy and you're blasphemous, and they'll either put you in jail or in the nut house, which is pretty much the same thing. However, if you wake up in India and tell your friends and relations, my goodness, I've just discovered that I'm God, they'll laugh and say, oh, congratulations, at last you found out. And I wanted to bring one more person into this, Nargis Allegria, who's someone that I follow. To become absolute, you have to accept that you are God, that there is only God. You have to admit that others are gods too. But if your love does not stretch that far and you are blinded by your shadow, don't complain that liberation did not happen yet. Why should freedom reveal itself to someone who refuses to embody love? When you are ready to perceive God in everything, you have opened a gate that opens the possibility of being eaten raw by the absolute. And here is where you're going to start losing religious people. P.S. Everything you hate is God, because there is only God. Anything that you think should not be happening is God, because there is only God. Realize there only being God, and it will prevail first in your experience, then in the collective. And Chuck, guess what? They show you this in the Bible. Isaiah 45:7. I form the light and create the darkness. I make the peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. Everything in existence is a part of God. The good, the bad, all of it. Religious people can't admit that they are God. Only in Jesus and God are God. But how can something exist outside the infinite? String theory used to be the most cutting-edge quantum physics. That's about 25 years ago. And it talks of 11 dimensions to make it work. Incidentally, the way the math works, and I'm not going to get into this right now, but you only need the 7th dimension to prove that God exists. The 11th would be every possible outcome, every possible avenue, every possible new dimension, everything. Now, the most cutting-edge quantum physics states that the universe is conscious. Well, welcome to the party. Incidentally, Hermes talked about string theory 6,000 years ago in the Hermetica. The third Hermetic principle is the principle of vibration. Nothing rests, everything vibrates. This is 6,000 years, and these quantum physicists now are bending over backwards for each other, giving themselves a high five for discovering something that we knew 6,000 years ago. You are God experiencing itself subjectively through amnesia. The book of Thomas, saying 77, split a piece of wood and I am there. Raise up a stone and you will find me. God is everything. The wood, the stone, this now makes sense. Quran 5:32. That is why we decreed for the children of Israel that whomever kills a soul without it being guilty of manslaughter or corruption on the earth is as though he has killed all mankind. And whoever saves a life is as though he has saved all mankind. We are all one. We are all God. This makes sense now too. Matthew 25:40. So I went through a Gnostic text, I went through the Quran, and now I'm going to give you one of the Gospels.
Okay.
You, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. We are all one. This makes sense now. We are all God, therefore we are all infinite and eternal. When you realize you are eternal and you are God, just as the enlightened have realized in the past, this is Buddha under the fig tree, this is Vishnu, this is everything in the past. As Christ was written to understand, you get filled with love. You no longer fear death, and you're driven to love one another, not because of fear of punishment like the religious. The biggest mystery of life is sitting in front of you in plain sight. The religious texts allude to it, but they never come out and say it. You also have to understand, this is important, Chuck. What I'm about to say is very important. You also have to understand that when you come to this realization, that feeling you get inside is the exact same feeling that religious people feel when they get saved. Only they are ruled by fear. This is why it's so hard for them to let go of their holy books as a literal text, which brings me to my next point. The Bible right here is made up of holy sciences. There's 11 of them. Metaphysics, astrological, astrotheological, that's what I cover. And what I cover is just a slice of it. And I've been studying it for 12 years. Each one of these sciences, you need to put that kind of time in to understand. Anatomical, alchemical, spiritual, esoteric, mythology. The Bible is also an etymology book. The Bible is also a numerology book. And the Bible is also a gematria book. And the Bible is also a psychedelic book. There's 11 holy sciences, 11 being the master number, by the way. So, we are all God interacting with itself. We are eternal and infinite and powerful. We use DMT and hallucinogens to see other realms and connect with God. We meditate to lose the voice in our head so that we can be one with the all. This is the secret of life, and this is the best part. The meaning of life is to find your gift, and the purpose of life is to give it away. That was Picasso, and that is my explanation.
That is that's amazing. I want to go back to part of it where we're talking about the experience subjectively, and look, a real world metaphor that anybody could observe. This idea about being within the mother's womb and then coming out. Okay, well, that's perfect, because at a certain point, yes, you're within the mother, so therefore you're experiencing through the mother. This is what we all do, at least until they get these artificial wombs rolling, right?
Right.
We all experience it this way, and it's a unique experience in that you're within. And I've tried to explain this, and I've gotten a lot of flack for it, where I've said, at a certain point, your parents become your gods because they are the provider of all things.
They feed you, they love you, they punish you. Absolutely. You're a part of them. You literally are a part of them. It's the same thing.
It's the same relationship. So, and like you were saying, literally you can experience it subjectively as, okay, half of this new being, this new creation is me anyway. It started out as half of me. It started out as half of my partner. Here we go, right? And you can experience it that way. You recognize things within it, that new creation. And as a parent, I've done this, a few times. You recognize, and you also recognize the changes, the differences, the experiences that they are now going to have. They're going to go into new directions. They're going to do some of the same crap you did, but they're also going to do a bunch of different things. Meanwhile, you're still in a state of amnesia because you don't necessarily understand your place in the universe. Although you're beginning to understand it through them sometimes. This is why parents get a very romantic kind of sense of things. They start talking about how they're, living through their children, or they're re-experiencing life like that. This to me
There's
is
a healthy way to do that, and there's an unhealthy way to do that. Like a healthy way to do that would be probably to like put your kid through sports, right? An unhealthy way would be like if you have like a 5-year-old and you're trying to put them in like the acting scene, you know what I mean? Trying to get them big, and then you're just taking them from audition to audition, or you're putting them in beauty pageants. That's unhealthy.
Well, see, that's the thing. Generally speaking, a lot of parents have come to this idea that you gotta allow them to have their free will at a certain point, right? Mm-hmm. Once they're able to stand up on their own, because we're a little different than a lot of other mammals. Many other,
we're the only mammal that comes out completely helpless.
Right.
Even a deer comes out and it has to learn how to walk. A giraffe. All these animals have to come out. They can. Sure, maybe they have to learn how to hunt, but they come out and they can walk and they can breathe and they can feed themselves.
They're functional.
We're the only mammal that can't.
Right. Us, we're helpless. So it's a unique position in that we're not ready to go. It's part of our neurology. There's a physiological reason for this, absolutely. But I think there's also a spiritual reason for this. We have to experience that dependence. We have to experience that helplessness. And again, I see the cycle of life because later on, what do you do? If you live long enough, you generally end up again in that very same helpless state.
Your kid's now taking care of you if you did a good job as a parent.
Right. So your arc in life is to begin in a helpless state.
The bell curve is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And but this is the natural way of things. Yes, I know that people have different experiences, so on and so forth. But again, if you take a look at these things overlapping, and you understand that this is the cycle of life that should be, it makes perfect sense. Now, taking that to this concept of, well, what about a relationship to God? It's the same relationship, except that it's a little more. It's a little more. We're only experiencing it on that one level. We do experience our ancestry in this way too, and you can look to various things that don't even necessarily have books when it comes to their orders and it comes to their understanding of the rest of the universe and the spiritual experience that we are all having, where they talk about ancestry a lot and the fact that we are part of this continuous curve or the continuous.
We now know for 100% fact that traumatic events pass down through DNA.
Right. We are learning now that a lot of these things get passed down, but if you take a look at some of the ancient orders of things, they knew this already. They knew that you carried on things generationally because you do. Where they're talking about, you're taking the deeds of the father and the grandfather and you're taking them forward and all that. Yes, that's a very simplified way to explain it. But in a true sense, you physically take those things on, not only by recognizable traits, right? You look back far enough in your own genealogy. If you got pictures, you're going to find people that look like you. Eventually, they're going to resemble you. They're going to resemble your mom. They're going to resemble somebody, right? Because eventually these things repeat. There's only so many combinations.
Right. Actually, they say, Chuck, it's interesting because they say at any given time on Earth. They've done some studies on this. At any given time on Earth, there's 6 people on Earth that are your doppelganger.
Right. Right. And that makes mathematical sense, actually, because, again, there's only so many combinations.
Right.
And you'll occasionally encounter this. It's difficult because to find 6 people on Earth at this point is a little difficult, but then again, we are expanding. We're gaining speed in our awareness on what's around on the Earth, although maybe we're not. We're actually getting slowed down, but that's a story for another day. I think this is really interesting because you can overlay the physical understanding, the alleged evolution in science, right, and the spiritual, and bring them all together and have them make sense. They're not in contradiction with one another.
Here's what I tell people. I tell people that creation absolutely happened. It didn't happen like it explained in the Bible. Evolution is an absolute truth too. It didn't happen like Darwin explained it. Okay, it is a amalgamation of the two, and you can see this. I was having a conversation. My cousin Mary is she's the top radiologist in the entire country, and she went through med school and all this. And I'm in Boston, living there about 10, 11 years ago, and we went to a museum, right? And we saw all these bones, and she said, "Don't you find it interesting that the vertebrae, you know how they're broken down with us, with your cervical and then your lumbar, and then, right? It's very similar to every animal out there. It's very similar to them. The way they have 6 of these and then 11 of these, especially with the dinosaurs. So it's an evolved code is what it is."
Right. Well, no, but there's a whole bunch of things that are evolved codes. Why is it that we come up with, the shape of the hand, exactly why is the hand in the shape it's in, so on and so forth. All of these things actually make sense. That's the thing. All of these things that we've been taught are contradicting one another, are at odds with one another, are in truth overlaid on one another, reveal the whole of the puzzle.
Right. Survival of the fittest. Survival of the fittest can absolutely exist, and you can absolutely destroy the idea that a fish started walking on land and suddenly it became a monkey that became us. That's absurd.
No, true. But again, these things overlaid, not every single part of them is absolutely workable. There's always misunderstanding, and of course there are things that are misconstrued because they were missing some of these other parts. You have to carefully put it together. It's not an easy thing to overlay, right? To connect. But the truth is that all these people going in these different directions, even attempting to observe certain disciplines and ignoring the rest, even in their work attempting to ignore it, what they've really done is shown that there is a very intricate part that needs to be understood, like evolution being laid over creationism. They are both true.
Right.
And that's a difficult thing for people to wrap their minds around. Like, how is it that they can both be true? Because you've always been taught their contradictions. The idea that we are indeed separate, yes, physically we are separated, but we aren't that much separated. There is only so much distance between us. Even if you were to understand, and take it from the literal, forget about the interconnectivity of the consciousness and all that. How far apart is one human being from another? Like you said, genetically.
You could literally talk about quantum physics, and you could talk about what Einstein called spooky action at a distance, which is when you have one particle and another particle, and you separate them, and it doesn't matter the distance, but you fuck with this one immediately responds.
Right.
It's called quantum entanglement.
That no matter what
is an illusion.
Yeah. That's the interesting thing, is that this idea of distance, this idea of separation is indeed an illusion as well. What is the purpose of it? I love the idea that, let's just break apart pieces here, send it out, and then they have separate experiences. And the only reason why they appear to have separate experiences is because they've been compartmentalized. And what happens eventually, you're going to want to bring that data all back and pull it together. I mean, someone could imagine that you're breaking off pieces of a spaceship into separate little drones, having them go out and collect all the information there is, have them come back, rejoin one another, and share the information. And this, to me, sounds like, again, the expansion and contraction of the universe people have been talking about when it comes to the Big Bang.
The Big Bang, and then the Big Crunch, and then some people say that it's been going like this for eons and eons and eons, which is interesting too, because as space is how they tell you space is, the furthest that we can measure is 93 billion light years away. How is that possible when the universe is only 14.5 billion or 27? They just changed it to 27. It's irrelevant. This is called there's a word for it. Shit. It's called I can't remember the word for it. This sucks.
We'll come back to it. Yeah. Well, we'll come back to it because
go fast.
We'll come back to that, because there's another solid thing here that I want to run by you, which I find entirely fascinating. And that is, even when you think of yourself as one solid thing, you're not. Matter of fact, I saw a thing that represented to me that, in truth, when you take a
time dilation, that was the word. It was called time dilation. But go on.
Time dilation. There you go. But the thing about the single individual is that actually you're made up more of space than you are of substance, which is real.
Guys, look at an atom. Look at an atom. You have the proton, you have the neutron, and then you have 99% empty space. It's actually more than that. And then you have the electron going around it.
Yeah, the majority of what you are, the majority of what everything is actually more made up of empty space than anything else.
Right.
Which is really interesting. It's like I said this to I forget who I said this to, but it was really funny. I said it's almost like we're cosmic balloons, really,
right.
Because we've been blown up into these things. But in truth, the very little bit of substance that it takes to create this complex thing means that if you put a massive amount of it together, oh boy, what would you have? Because we're basically balloons. We're not even like a solid ball of anything.
We also know in quantum physics that if you're observing something, a particle, and then you're not consciously observing it, it acts in superposition, which means they've literally measured like an atom, right? Like an atom in 7 different locations at once when it wasn't being observed.
Right.
So it acts as a wave. if you're not if it's not being a solid piece of matter. You can look at the double slit experiment if you've ever looked at that to see that. I mean, that goes into it deeply.
Yeah, well, the idea about the different waves of light that come out, and then if you're not observing it, it behaves differently than if you are. And it's difficult to prove because then they go, well, how do you know if you didn't observe it? But I get it because they did that with the splitting of the laser, right? And that was really interesting. I just watched that a couple of months ago, actually. I went through a whole long presentation on that. Didn't bring it on my show, but because I didn't know how to present it, to be honest with you. It was like, this is fascinating. This is part of the reality that's all around us at all times, but it's very difficult to figure out how to bring this down, how to kind of, siphon this into something that's consumable. Because,
Right.
I mean, look at what we're doing. We're going all around the world. We're having this conversation. And honestly, there's a whole lot of people out there that have no idea what we're talking about.
Right.
Now, have probably turned us off already because it's gone beyond what it is they want to recognize. Not because they can't understand it, by the way, but because they don't want to go beyond this idea that I'm a separate thing. I'm a special singular
Well,
thing.
that's ego. That's the ego right there.
And we've offended that because we've said, look, at all times, yes, you're everything, you're God, but you're also equal to everything else around you.
This is why I initially said that, Chuck. I was like, look, the second they tell you God is infinite, you have that. And every religious person will tell you God is infinite. Now let me ask you a question. When you die, if you're a part of God, how are you going to stand before infinite or infinity to be judged? You're a part of it. You go back to source. You continue on. It's every religious person will sit there and tell you, everyone, that God is infinite, and that is where you get them.
Well, the only argument I could see there is they could say, well, that's also part of the rest of the experience. They send them to, other realms in order for them to, to go along that way. But it doesn't work because at the end of the day, still, if you are part of, and they already say they're part of this, that the spirit is within them. They are the spirit. They are part. Well, if you are part of it, then what you've already said without saying it is that you're part of God.
Right.
And if you are, okay, welcome to the party, like you said. It's a great thing to understand. And the other thing is, they also have a hard time wrapping their minds around, well, the terrible things. God is supposed to be love. Well, wait a minute. You told me God was everything. And as a matter of fact, as you showed in the scriptures, it says right there, look, I make the light, I make the darkness, I make pain, I make pleasure, I make it all.
Well, I would say to that, Chuck, I would sit there and say, how can you measure good unless you have a polarity to measure it against?
Well, of course, you can't measure positive against negative unless you have both to work with. It's very simple. How do you even know that a light is on if there is no darkness? You don't. And vice versa. How do you know that there's anything that's such as light without darkness? Or how do you know that there's any darkness unless you have some light? You can't. There must be a contrast in order for you to experience a difference. So, and that in and of itself explains why there has to be this separated sort of experience. Again, I'm trying to break these things down to the oversimplified. You go into a lot of different directions here. I love the way you did it, though, because it is the best explanation where, please argue with me about this. Please tell me how it is that, God is everywhere, God is infinite, and I am part of everything. How is it that I am not part of God? At the very least, say I'm part of it. Truth is, it goes beyond that because everything, I mean, it's going to sound crazy, but everything is everything. It's weird. I was thinking of that movie that won awards last year or whatever.
Everything all at once or whatever.
Yeah, everything everywhere all at once. And a lot of people thought it was a silly concept. And I thought, no, this is actually really great. It shows you a fraction of the possibility if you understand that indeed, everybody thought it was a demonstration of string theory. Okay, here's the possibilities. Like you said, going into the how many different things could occur and all that. Yes, it does show that on some level, but the overall message is that all of these things come back to a single source, one way or another. It's the grand, they have a bagel in this thing. Have you seen it?
I have to, though.
Yeah, I think you got to see it because
that one's on my list, and Nicolas Cage Knowing is on my list too.
Okay.
But I've got some that I have to watch. Yeah.
I think you'll have to add the everything bagel to your presentation, because there's a bagel basically at the center of the universe that has everything on it. Okay, so you get the hint. Okay, it's interesting, and they choose the toroidal shape for a reason. It is a sacred shape, believe it or not. There are sacred shapes and sacred presentations of matter. That's true. At a certain point, I mean, they think it's silly, a lot of people, but at a certain point, the same presences end up as rocks with googly eyes. And believe me, I've told you a bunch of details now. I haven't spoiled the movie for you. There's a lot to it, and there's a lot of ways you can interpret it. And usually I'm not into the latest Hollywood crap or whatever, but I stumbled upon it and realized that I had to witness this, because it was somebody finally going beyond the typical here's good and evil. I mean, this year they're resurrecting the Exorcist theme and all that, as they reload and regurgitate all kinds of crap out of Hollywood. But that was a uniquely presented idea about the nature of the universe, and the fact that, I mean, as
You know
silly
what other movie I thought was fantastic? It's from 1995.
Okay.
It was a movie with Jodie Foster called Contact.
Okay.
Okay. You should check that out, because it goes and explains the multiverse. It explains why certain, like, how is Jesus real? I mean, how is Jesus not real if everybody sees him all the time? Right? Or as you're dying, if you see Jesus or family members, and like, well, I mean, I'm not going to get into that now. I've touched base on it before, but it's basically like these entities that help bring you to where you're going next come as things that you would find peaceful in your life. They're not going to come with their 2,000 eyeballs like they have in the Bible. That's not how they're going to come, these angels. They're going to come as Jesus, because you find that comforting, and it's going to make it easier for you to slide through.
Exactly. And the other part about that is, look, I can easily say that no, there was not a historical Jesus Christ. There wasn't one guy that was walking around, and yet the Bible's not lying to you too. See, both things are actually true. Okay. It doesn't even matter. It's just like the concept of, is the earth flat or round? All right. Now, I'll tell you that physically, directly, I would say that the earth is not flat, but it also means that I understand that it's actually both. It depends on how you're looking at it. It's flat or it's round, okay? And it's roundish, not really too completely round. It's not a perfect ball. But then again, maybe
they lie to you. First of all, NASA lies to you. They show you these planets.
Yeah.
And they're all perfect spheres. Well, you've got Venus, Jupiter, Neptune, and Uranus. Those are gas giants. I don't know any gas that forms a perfect sphere.
No.
There's no. It's not Mars. There's no physical land on it. These 4 planets are gas, just gas, and they show you them as perfect circles.
Exactly. So look, I think that you've done an excellent presentation here. I'd like to put this out among my people, see what it is they think. I know I'm going to get some anger back from a couple of people that are very committed to certain limitations about this kind of discussion. I know that's going to happen. Fine. But but we don't have to be limited. If you guys have some other comments, I definitely want to hear from you. So go ahead and send me messages, social media or through the website, any which way you want. That's fine. I'd love to get your thoughts. I think Micah is giving us, and this is Micah Dank once again. So I don't know. We didn't do the regular introductions or any of that, did we?
We didn't.
But screw it. This is a different kind of show, and I'm doing it on a Monday early in the day, which is unusual. I don't usually do broadcasts on Monday anymore, but I wanted to sit down with Micah for sure, and I've been meaning to get to this discussion for a while, because I think this is a really fascinating and enlightening breakdown. Here's the thing. You can argue with stuff that Mike has said, sure. You could argue with some of the things that he decided to reference. Maybe you've got different references in your scriptures, in your version of the scriptures, whatever. Fine and dandy. You know what? I can say to you, the listener, the viewer, indeed, you could be right and Micah could be right simultaneously. Right and wrong is not the issue here. As a matter of fact, it's awareness. And I think that is the overall message that we have to take from this. There is a way to become aware about what is around us, what is happening within, without, so above as is below, and vice versa. Guess what? It all is happening everywhere all at once.
It is. Space and time is an illusion.
There you go. So, and that's the other thing about time travel, which is something I do want to get into at some point with somebody. The idea about time travel and how it's not even a relevant discussion. But anyway, Mike, I think this is a really good discussion. I thank you for taking the time to do this today, man.
Thanks, man. I really enjoyed talking to you. Hey, do you have any news on Coast?
Actually, I'm going to be on Coast to Coast AM on the 18th of November. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. So, for you guys who don't know, me and Chuck became friends through Occult Priestess. Me and Chuck, we did some interviews. We got along really great. And I was like, look, I love your JFK stuff. I was like, let me put you through to someone. And it was Richard Syrett, who subs in for George Norrie on Coast to Coast. And I told him, I go, me and Richard, even though he's a Christian, we have a great rapport. We respect each other tremendously. I was like, listen, just knock the interview out of the ballpark, and I'm almost guaranteed he's going to bring you on. And you'd mentioned to me that you'd always wanted to go on.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, Richard, and you know what's funny is I've always appreciated Richard Syrett anyway, because he used to do a show in Canada on something called Zoomer Radio, which was just called The Conspiracy Show. And I was a constant listener of his. And I love his delivery. I love his interview style, all that. And look, I was just happy to go on Strange Planet with him and talk to him, really. But I've always wanted to be on Coast to Coast, because that's like, that's the big deal. I don't even have a book to sell or anything, but I'm going to enjoy myself talking to Richard about the JFK assassination on the 18th of November, which is funny because I'm going to be in the middle of the conference in Dallas exactly then. I'm the MC of the Lancer conference this year, and so I'm going to have to break away from the conference and sit down and talk to Richard for a while, and it's going to be it's really I can't even stop smiling about it. I only got informed about it yesterday, actually. That I was being booked, and really happy. And I can't thank you enough. I can't thank Occult Priestess enough. I'd love to get her back on. I haven't talked to her in a bit. I'd love to talk to her again soon.
I think she's settled in. I think she can come on. Reach out to her on Twitter or whatever.
Excellent.
But yeah, congratulations on getting on Coast. Guys, if you go back, so my channel, I have 3 playlists, right? I have my short bombs, because I try to put playlists because people are like, where do I start on your channel? I have short bombs, which is like the kind of stuff that I randomly talk about, short videos. I've got my interview section, and I've got my my astrotheology section. But if you go to the interview section and you scroll down, you can actually listen to me and Chuck break down the JFK. It's one of the interviews we have. So that's basically what he's going to do when he goes on Coast.
Right, and hopefully I'll be taking calls. I mean, that's I don't even
second hour. You'll do calls in the second hour.
Okay. I didn't know.
So what they're going to do, just to give you a heads up. Shit, hold on.
No problem. There we go. Technical. Got the phone.
What they're going to do on Coast is you're going to go on. They're going to do a little. They're going to play like the intro. They're going to talk for a little bit. They're going to bring you on. They're going to do about 15 minutes, then a commercial. 15 minutes, then some commercials. 15 minutes, then some commercials, and then they're going to do the second hour, which maybe he'll ask you a couple follow-up questions, but then you'll start getting the calls in.
Excellent.
And then after the second hour, he'll thank you, and that'll be it. And then boom, that's it.
You know what? I'm looking so forward to it. It's just like, I mean, I was listening to Coast back when, Art
Bell.
Back when Art Bell was on there, right? I mean, I love that. I had my mind blown by that John Teeter guy. You know what I mean? The guy with the time travel and all that. I remember I mentioned time travel before. I mean, look, I never even took it seriously. And of course, I was into what Norrie was doing and loved what Knapp did over there. I enjoyed that. I've always enjoyed that show, And so it's really great. And I'm actually going on there with a guy I like. I really do like Richard Serrett. I always have. He's got this very like smooth, calm demeanor, which he's gotten a little more loose since he's been doing, I think, Coast to Coast. He's gotten a little more, little more texture to him. But when he was on the Canadian radio station, it was great because he was like just this very smooth, calm guy. No matter what went on, he was very calm. And I used to love listening to him. And really, really happy to be going on there. I haven't even announced it anywhere else because, like I said, I got informed yesterday. And so
I didn't mean to blow your surprise. I'm sorry.
No problem. But it's the 18th. Yeah, the 18th of November, I'll be on there. Let's see, 10 to 12 Pacific is what they gave me time slot wise. Right. So, yeah.
Listen, all I did was connect you with him. You sold yourself. You gave him your info. This is all you. I just opened the door. That's it.
And I really appreciate it. I mean, it's one of those things. I've been doing this, by the way, for 10 years, the Cheli effect. And I had always hoped to get on, and I had other times I thought I was going to get on Coast to Coast, and it never worked out. And, I think I told you that. And when you said, I know somebody who does host on there. And I said, yeah, I don't know. I don't think they're ever going to put me on. And, and then lo and behold, you were confident, actually. You said, no, I think you'll talk to him. He's going to want you on there. That's it.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, let's try. Why not? And I was just happy, like I said, to be on Strange Planet. But now, yeah, I'm going to be on Coast to Coast AM, and it's going to be, I'm going to enjoy that. That's going to be great because it's one of those things that I just always wanted to do. So really appreciate it, man, and appreciate you opening the door.
No problem, man. That's what I do.
Absolutely. So with that, I'm gonna sign off of my audio stream, but of course we got the video going still. And if you're catching this somehow just now, go back and take a look at Micah's presentation because it's really incredible, really great. And I'm thrilled to just have sat here and been a part of it because it's perfect. I barely knew what to ask him because he covered so much actually in it. So it's a really, really solid one. The nature of God, you would call this presentation?
I would say, what is God?
What is God? Even better, much simpler. What is God? There you go. Micah Dank, everybody. And I'm going to put show notes together and direct you to his books and all that.
I'm going to download this, but then when I'm done, I'm going to email it to you. I'm going to email you the raw file.
Excellent.
So, Chuck, man, it was great. Let's stay in touch. Good luck in 19 days.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, you're going to be on from midnight to 2 a.m., so you're going to need some coffee.
Well, wait a minute. I'll be in the central time zone because I'm going to be in Texas.
Oh, so you're even luckier. Okay.
Yeah. So I got to.
Chuck, thank you so much. This has been great.
Thank you.